business, how you, thank you, how you position what you're doing, how you position your offering, how you position what it is you're selling to whomever you're selling in such a way that they understand and appreciate the value. Okay. So I guess the first question is, what is it that encourages us or makes us feel like we need to discount or not charge what we're worth? Does anybody have any thoughts on that for me?
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Who's that? Will?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah,
Hello,
just an observation. Some people, as a nature or even as a culture, never like to pay full price or what they perceive as full price. So it's a bit like going into if you like the Casbah or somewhere where naturally you'd barter or not barter, you'd bargain. So you know, if you're going to buy a carpet overseas, they start at 500 quid, you start at 50 quid, that sort of thing, and you meet in the middle. But that's an extreme. But it does actually happen, I think, in the work that we do at times, where somebody wants to report back, especially if it's not necessarily, they aren't necessarily the full decision maker. In most cases, a lot of us will be dealing with the decision maker, but psychologically, their concept of them having, you know, he asked for so much, but I managed to get him down to such and such. They see that as a win for them.
Yes, that's a very good point, Will. Thank you for bringing that up.
Right.
The cultural element is something that has an impact, and I agree with you. There are some people who they just love a deal, so they will always ask for discounts. We'll perhaps come back to that, because discounting, as we know, eats straight into your profits, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. Interestingly, one of the things there that came through for me is, if you think about the Casbah and the carpets and so on and so forth, if you've ever been over to that area of the world, then what tends to happen is we're conditioned to expect it and understand it. So similarly, there are businesses out there that have done an awful lot to condition us not to ask for discounts. So I'll give you an example. If we go to the supermarket and we do a weekly shop, we don't get it all totaled up and say, okay, that's £192 or that's 58 quid or whatever it is, and then say, well, I tell you what, let me give you 50 quid for cash. It just simply doesn't happen. And the reason is we're conditioned not to ask for discount in certain areas, but it's also very easy to encourage people to discount. And let me tell you what I mean. I see we've got a couple of chats there, so let me just have a look and make sure I'm not missing anything. Dan, you said the large company procurement teams expect reduced preferred rates too. Yeah, absolutely. And again, if we're dealing with large organizations and we're dealing for a protracted period, or we're buying large elements or numbers, then there is often the need to do that. And I think that is a business decision. That's certainly something that we can choose to do. But I think if that's positioned and we understand that we know we're going to get more out of it ultimately, because we won't have to find another client, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it can be worth doing, but we'll only go so far. So, and again, another good point. There's another point here from Ian. New clients are paying a certain price with existing recruitment agencies, and so to do business with them, Ian has to fall into place with their existing terms with other agencies, and if you don't match it, we won't work with you mentality. Yeah, again, Ian, I think we've all suffered from that. I can get it for. And I think we should deal with both of those, because I can get it for comes down to, yes, of course, we all know the question, are we buying like for like? Is it apples for apples? Interestingly, what we'll find is those people that are trying to beat you down on price are viewing you as if you're doing exactly the same job, and that's quite key. And Ian, with recruitment particularly, I think we'll find that people see recruiters as recruiters as recruiters until we're able to educate people differently. So there's a conditioning element there, and that's a perfect question because it's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today. So one of the questions I ask in seminar and workshops is, who is it that has the most concern about pricing? Who worries most about pricing? Any thoughts? Okay, we'll crack on, because generally speaking, what tends to happen, those that worry most about the pricing are the sellers.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought, oh my goodness, totaled it all up and thought that's an awful lot of money? Or that seems a bit high, and so on and so forth. When you start to look at it, the problem comes when we don't totally believe in our own value. Okay. Obviously, if we're not believing in our own value, it's really, really difficult to telegraph that to somebody else. So I think, interestingly, what tends to happen is we look at what we're selling, we look at the pricing model, and here's probably a good time to talk about pricing models. I want you to think about what your pricing model might be. Excuse me. So there's skimming, and these are the people that do go in high, and then they'll give you a little reduction so that you feel you've had a win. There's obviously the competitive, where you're saying, look, you know, we're lower than our competitor or our neighbor. We'll often see we won't be beaten on price. What about premium pricing? When you know you've got something really, really good and you charge a premium for it and you stick to your guns. So there's another one out there. We'll just cover these. The supermarkets and large organizations, sheds as I call them, the B&Qs and those types of thing, you'll often see them use loss leaders. They'll have something at the front that's in all their advertising, on their websites, all over the place, which is a really, really good price, brings us into the store, and then we buy everything else at the normal value. So loss leading. What I want to do primarily with today, because this is where 99% of the businesses that I've worked with over all the years, we get to the point where we look at how do we educate the marketplace. So I call it the psychological side. So it's perception influencing. How do we influence people's perception? There's the value proposition. So there is the perception of the consumer, or the perception of the business that we're dealing with. Now, what's interesting about this is I always have interesting conversations with people where they're talking about, yes, Chris, but you don't understand the pressure if everybody else is selling at this, or somebody else is going to do it cheaper. So again, let's just deal with that. Often people will sell cheaper, but it could be because they don't understand the ramifications to their own profitability. It could be because they have a smaller overhead to control and they believe they can do it. It could be because they're entering a market and they're looking to undercut everybody else to draw business. And we've even seen it with large organizations where they're buying the business, virtually cutting the competition out so that they can then service it, and they'll go right back up again. And as you know, a lot of you, particularly in the UK, we've seen a lot of that in recent years. I have seen it in the US when I worked over there. And, you know, in other countries around the world, it's an often used tactic. So it's interesting, Richard, you said that your thinking is always based on, your pricing is based on your offering, not your budgets. And should you be questioned? It's very good, because, you know, if you have total belief in what you're doing, that's one thing. If you are able to demonstrate, articulate, and help people to understand the value you can bring for what you do, that's another. Tori, you'll forgive me because a lot of the examples I'm likely to use will be UK-based examples. Excuse me. However, the same thing happens, as you know, in the US, all over the place. We have a store over here at it's called John Lewis. It's an upmarket store. We know we're going to pay the highest price or a relatively high price. It's not a discounted price, but a lot of people use them. And when questioned, what always comes back, it's about the perception of value. So it's the fact that if one buys a TV or a washing machine from John Lewis, we don't ever have to worry about it if it goes wrong. The fact is they automatically extend the warranty from a year to 2 years. That's done through the company. So what we're buying there often is peace of mind. So I want you all to consider that with what you do. Think about, last month we were talking in the webinar about unique selling propositions. We were talking about the ability to educate. We were talking about how to help people understand the value that we bring. And the value comes down to giving people confidence. So the information, the way in which we articulate our offering is critically important. So the language itself is important. Again, we'll come back to that. I have a question just come up here, or a comment, so bear with me, guys. Okay, so Will, we're talking about tenders, competitive quote situations. Yes, of course, there are different dynamics, third parties, extra costs. The point I want to make here is it is in your control, but critically ensure that you've got these things nailed down before you go into your negotiations, so you know what your figures are. Particularly in that, one of the things I find is with sales teams. The larger the sales team, the often the worse the problem, unless the management management process is good. And that is, your salespeople may well find it easier to discount by a few percent to get the deal, but they may not know or understand the ramifications to your profitability. So if you do have other people on your team that do exactly the same sort of thing, make sure that you understand what happens. And we're going to come back to that. So a good point, well made. I would just like to show you something here. We'll go onto this next slide. I just want to check, did the slide change for you guys?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. So on the left here, we've got PNP. If you look at the whole of your business, what you'll generally find is, and I categorize all my clients, customers and clients, A's, B's, C's, sometimes down as low as F, but it depends on the business, depends on the dynamics and the number of departments. But if you take it as a generalistic overview, PNP, price no problem, pay no problem. The best example I can give you of this is the telephone rings and somebody says, right, Chris, John's on the phone for you from ABC Company. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. I'll be right there. Nice people, great to deal with. They pay their bills on time. They're not overly, onerous to deal with. It's not an arduous task. So price no problem, pay no problem. They're your A's. In the center are your B's. Now, your B's are your B's and B pluses. They're people that can be influenced, need to be educated to understand the true value of working with you. In all likelihood, they won't know that when they first start. And then on the right-hand side, as I look at my screen, PSH, I call these price shoppers from hell. And the reason I do is we've all had those that will beat you down on price, okay? They want the very best deal, but they want to pay the least, and they'll knock pennies off here and there. And then they become the biggest pain in your backside, okay? They're the ones that are calling. Anything goes wrong, it's your fault. Nothing's ever down to them. Okay. So what happens is they're the ones that are on the phone going, yes, but, yes, but. And we've all heard the saying, I think, the squeaky wheel gets the most oil. What happens is if we don't set and position our offering and our business to completely target those price no problem, pay no problem, our A client prospects, it's very easy to pull in B's, C's, D's, E's, F's, and they do become problematic. They take up an awful lot of time. And what's worse is they sap your energy. Okay. Yeah. You notice it when you're on a call with, or in a meeting with one of your favorite clients. You feel energized. It feels great. Okay. But then you get on a call and it's somebody who's always bleating on and moaning and giving you grief. What does it do to your energy levels? What happens if you have that one and then you talk to your A client? I do understand and appreciate, ladies and gents, that can be quite difficult. I do understand that. And so what we're talking about here is what we can do to set our stall out to appeal to the A's, B pluses that we can turn into A's. Okay. Give the C's away to somebody else. Hopefully your closest competitor. Let them deal with it. Okay. Now, we've all been in the situation, I feel, possibly where we need to get more sales in, or we're just starting, or there's an issue in the economy. And so what happens is it's almost open the doors, come one, come all. We're happy to deal with you. Yes, but I only want to deal with you at this price. Okay, well, let's talk about it, because we feel like we want the work. Something that should absolutely be looked at, because what we need to do is look at how we can create the value. The reason I say that is we want to think about conditioning. I talked 5 minutes ago about conditioning. Here's the thing. We've all gone past a store, or we have all done something more to buy from somebody who we know we're going to be charged more for or from, okay? And we go and we buy that service or we buy that product because we attach an additional value to it, like the John Lewis example. So where is the additional value and how do we get that out, understand it, and make that very, very evident in the marketplace? Now, here's the thing. Somebody is always going to charge more. Somebody is always going to charge less. They can charge more perhaps because they've got a good position, or they will charge less because, as I said earlier, they don't understand the ramifications, or they're working out of a back bedroom. And I'm not decrying working out of a back bedroom, we've all done it. But the point I want to make here is the way in which we educate people is mission critical. Okay, so how do we create value? I think, let me show you another example, okay? This is an online store, and as you can see from the nav bar, women, men, kids and babies, tells you a bit about the company, gives you help, there's newsletters, etc., etc., etc. And in here, these guys are selling shirts. What do we know about these shirts? Okay. Easy care, striped and long sleeved, £24.90. We don't know anything else. We don't know anything about the company. We don't know anything else about the quality of the shirts. So there's got to be either a bit of homework, or we're going to look at it and go, well, it can't be too bad for 25 quid, or that's about what I would normally pay, or that's half what I pay, whatever your conditioning is. And we all do different things. We all buy from different stores, okay? There are some people out there, and there's a percentage that will always buy the most costly. It's in their nature, they're able to do so, and it's because they feel that because it's more costly, they're getting better value. Similarly, there are those who will only ever buy from the cheapest stores because that's how they're conditioned, or it's what they're able to do with the wherewithal that they have. Okay. Will's come up with another point here about client that needs to realize they can help you to help them better, adds value, it leverages their own input to the job. Yes, we definitely want customer feedback. So how do we deal with that online? How do we deal with that with new clients or new prospects? What about when people are skimming through the internet, they're flicking through, they're scrolling, and they're looking for your business, they're looking for the product you sell or the service that you offer, okay? How do they make a buying decision? And these are the keys that we need to have up front. I did a morning session, a workshop with a group of businesses relatively recently. And one of the things that became very evident when we were talking about the education of the market was they said, but Chris, when I get in front of people, I can make them understand. Cracking point. And yes, you can, because you've got more time, you've got their hopefully undivided attention, and you're able to articulate effectively. And the point is, how do you do that online, in your advertising, on your websites, in your proposals, in all the areas that you don't have that opportunity to sit there and talk with them? Okay. So when we're talking about this stuff, guys, what I want you to think about is the application of it. So to carry this this example forward, this company, Uniqlo, here's a company, Charles Tyrwhitt, based in London, got a slightly different approach because, yes, the shirts are in there. You can see them all at the bottom here, just peeking up the ranges they suggest. But what they do is they ask the question, why Charles Tyrwhitt? Now, Nicholas Wheeler, who's the current MD, the quality of our products, from shirts and suits to trousers and ties, is better than ever. So your clothes will look better, feel better, fit better, and last you blooming ages. Right? A very, very human response. Get them now before they're gone forever. Okay, it's just a statement. It's got some niceties in it. It's got some platitudes in it. It doesn't really mean anything, but it's a nice to have, signed by Nicholas. But look at this. This is what I want you to look at. The guarantee: exchange or return your purchases up to 6 months after receipt. Now, when you look into that, that is whether you've worn it or not, whatever the condition. Right? That is a very powerful guarantee. 96% customer satisfaction on FIFO. That's pretty good. When you look into it, you'll find some people go, it was a day late. Moan, moan, moan. See clients, okay, possibly. But there'll be those sorts of interactions that lower the customer satisfaction rate. Standard delivery, et cetera, et cetera. So the point I'm making here is they educate the customer slightly differently. They're giving you added value and walking you through it. Now, if you looked at those two sites, you might judge the value or you might not. But what it does is it's about the perception. What are Charles Tyrwhitt doing to change your perception or improve your perception of their product over their competitors? And the question, of course, is what can you do? Okay. I think that we've got to think about the fact that businesses are many and varied. It's harder in some situations than others. What I would say is I'm doing a presentation tomorrow to a morning group, and somebody had asked me the types of businesses I've worked with, where, and the names of some of them. So I went back through my archives. Now, interestingly, for those of you that I haven't met personally, what was interesting was to be able to write down, yes, I've worked all over the UK, I've worked in the US, I've worked in Canada, I've worked across Europe. Different countries, different cultures. I have worked in, I haven't counted them up, but there's something over 100 different types of industry, types of profession, all manner of different things, from accountancy to electronics to consumer to retail, you name it, business banking, so on and so forth. This was the point I wanted to make. Wherever I've worked, whatever the business sector, there has always been a way to be able to educate the marketplace to truly understand the value, both prior to meeting, during the meeting, and post-meeting, okay? If you have that opportunity. Or if it's where there's no meeting involved, it can be in prior advertising that might take you to the website. It's then on the website. It's then what happens when you bought from the website, okay? And I just want to make that point again. I've been doing this nearly 30 years. A lot's changed in marketing and sales communications, but the fundamentals don't change. And the reason they don't, it comes back to what I said earlier about the psychological side of selling and marketing, influencing perception. Your job to help people to understand and appreciate why they should buy from you is to give them confidence by giving them the right information, couched in the right way, so that you can influence their perception of what they're likely to get. Doesn't mean you're going to have everybody leaping all over you, but we're looking at your key performance indicators, the numbers, how many people are visiting your site, whether or not they stay long enough, how many people are taking your calls, reading your adverts, whatever it is that you're doing to bring people to your door. And when you go in and you articulate your offer, when you then leave them with a proposal, when you follow it up, all the opportunities, every touch point is person to person. The common denominator here, ladies and gents, wherever you work in the world and whatever field you're in, is people. So whether you're selling to, I don't know, a single parent, whether you're selling to the CEO of a multi-international company, doesn't matter. We take on board information differently depending on what we're selling, but the psychological representation, the perception of information is processed the same way, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about positioning and posture of your business then, okay? I've taken just a broad cross section here. So Tori, for your information, EasyJet, you probably know of, they're a budget airline. Harrods, you'll have heard of, high class store in the centre of London. Vauxhall is our General Motors. It's owned by General Motors. So it's a mid-range car company. What I want you to think about is the fact that whatever product or service you're selling, okay, whatever marketplaces you're serving, your service ethic behind it and the price you pay absolutely must be congruent. Okay, absolutely must be congruent. So let me show you what I mean by that. Look, if you look at EasyJet, ladies and gents, the product is a down market product. It's cheap. There's no frills. The seats are all leather, lovely, but they're only leather so that they're easily cleaned. Okay. The marketplace they serve, those people who are not discerning and want to fly into Europe or wherever, Greece, etc., Turkey, as cheaply as possible. They just want to get there. The service levels. What service level do EasyJet offer? You know, as I said, no frills. Yeah, exactly that, Richard. I saw that pointing down. Okay, so what price would we anticipate paying? Makes sense, doesn't it? Exactly. I'm not going to trawl through these because you're all smart people, but Harrods, obviously, upper market. The products are all good quality. The service is excellent, and you're going to pay top money. Vauxhall, mid-range. This is the point. I speak to people who have a yearning to be the best. Absolutely right, so they should be. What we cannot do is we cannot deliver an exemplary service, which is very tailored and very hands-on for a price that's going to hit the bottom. Can't be done. Something has to give. Similarly, if you're selling an upmarket product and you're selling it at a decent price, you have to make sure you're targeting the right marketplace, and the service that goes with it, is comparable. I'll tell you a very brief story. A friend of mine, in lockdown, he treated himself. He's done very well, and he decided he would buy a new Porsche. My wife loves them. I think they're fine. I know, fine probably doesn't cover one of Germany's best vehicles, but you know what I mean. So he bought this brand new 911. And the experience, he said, it was a shame, he said, because he couldn't go and have all the fluffy stuff of collecting it from the dealer and everything. It was delivered, but beautiful car. Needed, he needed to have it serviced, first service. So what he did was he called his local dealer. Now he lives up in Lincolnshire. His local dealer is in Nottingham. I think it was Newark. So he arranged to have the car, which is not an inexpensive vehicle over in the UK. He arranged to have that vehicle serviced, booked it in. He runs a business. He phoned them and said, I am on my way, but I'm afraid I'm running 10 minutes late. Don't worry about that, sir. It's not an issue. Fabulous. Thank you very much. He then went up, and for those of you that know it, the A1, north to south Great Road in the UK, and there was an accident, as often happens. They were diverted off, and he was coming back on further up. He called them again. He said, look, I'm really sorry, there's been an accident. I understand there's going to be another 20 minutes delay. So he's now half an hour late for his slot. He eventually rolled in there about 48, 49 minutes late. And he was calling to say, I'm just getting there. And you'll love this. The service supervisor was a lady who picked up the call and said, well, I'm terribly sorry, but we won't be able to fit you in now. He said, well, I'm sorry about that, but I did call ahead and I did explain the issue. She says, yes, but we've got very tight schedules and we won't be able to fit you in. She was a little bit terse and rude. So my friend, Matthew, said, okay, don't worry about it. Here was the point. It'd taken 3 months to get the appointment. She said, well, you'll just have to rebook. So he said, don't worry about it. He said, I tell you what, I won't rebook. He said, and I would just like you to know that the friends that I have and the business owners that I know, many of them have more than one Porsche. And I will be telling this story to everybody who will listen to me. Okay, so high price, high value product, sold to the right market, awful service. She might have been having a bad day, inexcusable. The converse of that was he booked it in Nottingham, took it in there for a service, didn't even buy the vehicle there. They couldn't have been more happy to see him. They did do all the usuals, gave him the coffee, sat in a lovely environment. When he left, they gave him a wonderful pack with different creams and bits and pieces for the car and, you know, a welcome pack. His point was this. He said, they didn't know me either, but they understood service. Now, here's the thing. When you're looking at your business and you're aligning, doesn't matter what you do, you need to think about the fact that you are always selling to people. You have to live to their expectations and slightly exceed them wherever possible. We know that EasyJet is a down market product. We know that it's sold to those who want to get abroad cheaply. We know that the service is going to be very basic, but we also know that that's all we're going to pay, a basic price. So when they do surprise you and do something a little bit extra, it's thank you very much. We'll go with EasyJet, not Ryanair, our other budget airline. Okay. So you start to see the difference. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Okay, thank you. I just noticed we've got another. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, this is covering off other elements of offerings, a different angle, et cetera, et cetera. And that's another very good point, because it's bring it all the way back down to basics. It's market education, it's individual education. So what we have to do is, when people are talking about cost or price, have you ever had somebody go, well, that's a lot of money, or that's expensive? Anybody had that? Okay. I often ask the question, compared to what? And the reason I ask that question is because, do they perceive it to be a lot of money because your targeting is not quite right? So they perceive it to be a lot of money because they're not used to paying that sort of level. Do they perceive it to be expensive or a lot of money based on other products they've bought, other companies they've used, other services they've bought into? Because what it comes down to, again, is what is their experience and how do we educate them? So compared to what is not a bad question. It's good market information. So when they come back to you and say, well, I can get it for X down the road, part of the question is, well, do they do this? Do they do that? Or even you kind of go, right, but they haven't got any, have they? You could get it down there for cheap, you know, and it's cheaper, but they've sold out. So supply and demand. All of these things have an impact on us as individuals. The language that we use, okay? If we look at this slide, if we look at that fulcrum, you've got a cost force and you've got a value force, and the value force must outweigh the cost force. If you were bitten by a venomous snake, would you care how much you paid for the antidote? I don't think so. You pay whatever it took. Value force versus cost force. Okay, in day-to-day life, we're doing the same balancing act. Some of us shop at this store, some of us shop at that store. It depends on our income, depends on our wherewithal. It also depends on what we like. I have a friend who will only ever buy branded clothing, what I call branded clothing. You know, so Hugo Boss and Armani and because that's what makes him feel good. No problem at all. Me, it depends on what I'm buying. I'm working in the garden. I'm certainly not going to be wearing Armani. Okay. Vehicles. Some people want to get from A to B. We've all known very wealthy people who will drive a vehicle that is not necessarily an expensive car, but they could afford to buy 10 times better. It's up to them. So I just want to touch on language for a second. I've looked at, when I did this fulcrum graphic, I did it for a purpose. On there, it says cost force. I want to take that word cost. People say, how much does it cost? Or what's the price? How many of you use in your proposals and in your quotations the word cost? What does that telegraph? Okay, what does it telegraph? It's a cost. What about if it was an investment? Okay. Now, I try and get all of my clients to use the term investment, because most of the things that we buy could be perceived as being an investment, right? Okay, so if you buy a shirt, is it an investment? Well, if it is, if you think it's going to last for ages and it's good quality and people think you look cracking in it, you know, my days of looking cracking in anything have long gone, but the point I make is still valid, okay? When you buy something, there's a perception, it's yours and it's somebody else's. You have a need. If I say to you, look, when you invest in this marketing program, it's going to help you to clearly identify what's needed for your business so that you don't waste money. Okay? It's going to help you to define how to get to your end goal. It's going to enable you to do so on and so forth. You will all be doing the same with yours. It's an investment, not a cost. If you have to use price is permissible. But I don't want to say cost anymore, because you're introducing what for us is a conditioned negative. Well, it costs a fortune. But we all go, but that was a great investment, or it didn't. We still use it, didn't cost that much. But it's again about perception. Okay. You know, it's as Will says, you know, if they say it's cheaper down the road, he says, well, why aren't you talking to them then? Well, it will put their back up, Will. But it depends on the client. It depends on what you're doing. And we're not comparing eggs with eggs or apples with apples. But why do they perceive that we are? Why do they perceive that why do they perceive that they are? If you've ever seen a proposal, and we discussed this briefly last week last month in unique selling propositions and in differentiating your business, the proposal that says you're going to get one of those, and that's how much it is, does nothing to sell, right? Does nothing to sell. I want to just show you a slide now that I want you to take some notes on, because I want you to think about it. 2 minutes, and then we're going to wrap up in case there are any questions. So you've got your pen, you've got your paper. Question is this: think about your own marketing, think about your own sales communications. How well does your marketing sell your value proposition? Or does it just tell people what you do? Okay, we're accountants. Well, fabulous, but although we kind of think we know what an accountant does, we don't really. And how on earth do we differentiate? We need their help. So if you think about your value proposition and you're not using that effectively in your proposals, then I absolutely guarantee you're not converting anywhere near as much as you could and should. When I begin work with a new client on a consultancy and implementation basis, it's one of the first things we work on once we've understood why people should buy from them. And I say that because invariably, over the last almost 30 years, in every single country I've worked in every single, whether it be a bank, whether it be, an engineering firm, whether it's a manufacturer of whatever, the proposals have been invariably lacking. Because what they do is they tend to tell, not sell. Yet come back to that bit about, I was telling you earlier, when people go, yeah, but when I get in front of them, they understand. Put some of that in your proposals. Once you've identified what it is that differentiates you, we all know about features, advantages, and benefits. So why is it we don't use them effectively enough? How come our language is wrong? And I want you to think, lastly, about how you personally in your business address the question of price. The reason I tell you that is because that's got to be from your own perspective. It's got to be for your own markets, and it's got to be for your kind of clients. As Will said, why aren't you talking to them down the road then? Well, I would probably think that's fine if you're selling chocolate, but not if you want a good long-term relationship with a company where the money comes from longevity, working with people for a long while, okay? Selling and reselling. One of the things I said last month, and I'll say it again, is think about how you give people confidence and allay the fears and frustrations that they have when they're making a buying decision. Okay? One of the things that I do and have always done since I sold the last company and went out on my own, what I've always done is I never contract people. That works for me. It won't work for everybody else. It works for me. My clients invest in my services on a month-by-month basis. When they understand that a lot of the businesses I've worked with for years, it gives you an indicator of why they can be confident. Does that kind of make sense? There's a good story behind there. And we all love stories. Daddy, tell me a story. Mommy, tell me a story. You know, we're conditioned from children. So think about that. Okay. I just want to finish this for you now, because I want you to think about your pricing, and I want you to look at this. The effect on the gross profit of a markdown. So here you are, it's either you and somebody's going, I'll buy from you today if you do it at this price. Or, well, look, I'm going to work on, I've got lots of other projects, they're coming along. If this one goes well, you'll get them all. Okay? All these different things, the tactics that buyers use, and we've all heard buyers are liars. Okay? But let's say your gross profit margin is 30%. So here it is at 30%. Run your finger down 30% and drop down what the average discount is in Salesforce. Well, they'll turn around and they'll go, okay, Richard, I'll discount it. I'll knock 10% off for you. So they knock 10% off. Okay. Excuse me. So in knocking that 10% off, down here at 30%, around here, what that 50% is telling you is that you have to sell 50% more product or 50% more services or donate 50% more time just to stand still. That's the effect it has on your bottom line. At a 30% margin, when you discount 10%, the way the maths works is you will have to do 50% more just to stand still. So what are your other options? Adding value. Okay, Bill Gates was brilliant at it. Have a computer, and have some software, which is worth $482. Have some software that's worth £28. Have some software, have a mouse, have a this, bundling, okay? Now, it might be worth $428, but it only costs him $3 or whatever. You see my point? It's what we call it a soft dollar option. Well, Tori, you'll understand that better than most. Everybody understands it, but when we say a soft pound option, it just doesn't work. Okay, so we call it a soft dollar option. It costs us less, but it has a higher perceived value for your client. Okay? Thing is, we all want a good deal. We all want to feel like we've got a good deal. So 30% margin, drop by 10%, you have to do 50% more. Let me show you the converse of that. Bear with me. There we go. So let's say your education works really, really well. So you educate everybody and you're able to educate them to the real value that you can bring to them, to the point where you're still at 30%, but you're able to put your pricing up by 10%. Okay, here's the 10% again. So there's your 30, there's your 25. So you're at 30% margin. You're able to increase by 10% by educating your buyers, by targeting correctly, by helping them to understand and appreciate the true value. What that 25% indicates is that you can afford to lose 25% of your business before it negatively impacts on your market and on your profitability. Okay, so I want you to consider that one. The question I want you to consider is this: if, and this is the if, you were able to educate your marketplace, and I know it's not always possible, I appreciate it, but let's say you could educate your marketplace very effectively. You've got a great product or a great service, you really deliver it well, Okay, everybody loves it, and you're able to educate them to really understand and appreciate the value, and you put it up 10%, would you think you would lose a quarter of your business? If it's 24% you lost, you're still ahead. Okay, so consider it. Consider that. It's an interesting thought. And what I want to come back to finalize this is that when we talk to people, and there have been studies done by very, very various clever people all over the world about pricing and structure and so on and so forth, the people that are most concerned about pricing 9 times out of 10 are us, the sellers. Okay? But imagine if you were able to understand and appreciate how to educate people effectively, get your USPs right, get your structure right, get your market education right, truly help them understand so that you could position your pricing perfectly for your target markets and nobody could rattle your cage. Would you only sell to A clients and B plus clients? Of course we would. So, bit of a whistle-stop tour, I know. Hopefully that's been useful. I think the only thing I would ask now is if anybody has any questions. Some good points on the chat, some very good points on the chat. It's been an hour now, guys. Hopefully it was an hour well spent. As I said last month, if anybody wants to discuss their particular business with relation to this topic, then I'm always happy, you know, to just take the phone call or do a Zoom, just have 15, 20 minutes, half an hour with a cup of coffee and talk it through. Because often the answers are already within your grasp. Sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees. I do love an analogy, but tend to overuse them. Sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees. But here's the thing, you know your business is so well. To you, it's just the norm. Everything you do is the norm. But there are things that you do, I guarantee you, there are things that you do, possibly behind the scenes, where people go, wow, I didn't know that. If they didn't know that, whose fault is it? Okay, so it's about digging deep and going, okay, might be background, it might be what's used to build your product, it could be any manner of different things. But I guarantee you this, if you've got a business, you've got a product or a service for which exists a marketplace, then absolutely you can maximize what you're doing. It can be increased. Sometimes you're looking at it from an internal perspective, and you can never ever do what the rest of us can do, and that's see your business and your offering from an outside perspective. But dig as deep as you can. So thank you very much for coming to yet another profitable marketing webinar. I do tend to get a bit enthused, so my apologies if I was loud or too loud at any point. If anybody has a question, feel free to come off mute and just shout it out. If not, then let's catch up at another time. Dan, I've got yours there. Thank you very much. I'll get in touch. What I'll do is I'm going to stick around for a few minutes if anybody wants to talk, but I wish you all a fabulous Tuesday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I think most of you have got my email. You can get my contact details. They're on the screen, or you can get them at the website or on my LinkedIn. So thanks very much. Have a great time, great afternoon, and I appreciate you coming along.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Chris.